welcome back to Two Guides, One Truck. Today we're gonna have a little discussion, and we've had this discussion in the past about some of the better hunting calibers for rifles, and it's a pretty widely disputed, discussed topic, and where we want to go with this is kind of just share our opinions and also what we've seen as fact while hunting with these calibers. So where I'll start with this is definitely what I look for in a caliber isn't necessarily a massive size. It's more of what can I accurately shoot for the distances that I want to be shooting at that time. So sometimes I vary, and my big go-to is actually the 308. So it's in the 30 caliber range. And a couple reasons that I like the 308. It's a very universal round. I like the fact that it's a NATO round. I also like the fact that it has the stopping power, so I can do moose, I can do elk, I can do bear, but it's also not that huge wallop so that it blows apart, that 70-pound fawn that's at the end of at the end of hunting season when that freezer's looking awful empty. It doesn't leave me with 10 pounds out of that 70 pounds. So yeah, that's really my good go-to is the 308. What about you, Jay?
So I stay in the 30 caliber always. It's just, to me, it's such a good hunting caliber. Of course, depending on where I'm hunting, I'll swap out. I prefer the 30-30 for most everything below 100 yards.
Mm-hmm.
And that's mostly where I hunt. You don't get a shot above 100 yards ever. You don't get a shot above 30 yards ever. So I stick with the 30-30. 180 grain, because I do like it to have some good impact to it. The shock value is good. If I was to go and hunt in a field, like if again ag fields or something like that, the 30-06, that's what I like. It has all the ballistics to reach out and go the extra length. And 308, pretty much the same. 30-06. It's just one of those things where in Maine you have two guns. You have your 30-30 and you have your 06. It's hard to get away from those.
And they're tried and true.
Oh yeah.
And whenever you talk to anybody that's done a lot of hunting in Maine, that's typically what they'll say. And you get those people that they'll sit there and they'll have that old hunting story where they shot a deer in the neck at 238 yards with a 30-30.
257, baby.
257. And that's just not really feasible with a 30-30. But that's a lot of what Maine hunting is. You're looking at.
Right.
I mean, if you get a shot that's 75 yards, it's a pretty good shot. Pretty good distance for the area.
Yeah,
and
the trees are just so thick. The growth is so thick that unless you're hunting big open fields that are constantly being cut back,
yes,
crop fields, things like that, and hay fields, there's nowhere that you're going to have that open space.
Right, and when you get into those fields, I tend to see a lot of people use the 308, because it has that distance, the 270, which that has a very good flat level shot with that good stopping power. 243.
243.
243. A lot of people go with that 243, especially because it can go pretty well for the youth as well.
Yep, absolutely. You get a youth model 243. There's no recoil whatsoever, and it's damn flat at 200 yards. It's a straight flat shooting round.
Yeah, and it's a good quality. And when you get that, your 243 is no different than your the diameter of like a field point arrow.
Yeah.
So a lot of states allow the the field point. They don't have to have that broadhead. And if you have a well-placed shot with a 243 or that field point arrow, then it's going to do the same thing. Will it stop it in its tracks? Probably not.
But,
no. You never know, depending on how far away, how close you are.
Yeah, shot placement. But again, it's an excellent youth caliber. It's just about practice. They need to know where to shoot,
right,
or where to aim.
Yeah. I mean, I started out with the 22 mag.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I thought that was an excellent rifle.
Yeah, I did the single shot 20 gauge.
Yeah, single shot 20 gauge. Yeah, that's the way to start out.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, pick my arm up from 30 feet away.
Yeah, pick it up from the neighbor's house.
Yeah.
Especially, I mean, we both started at 10, right? Because that's what the age limit was at that point.
Yeah, it used to be 10 years old.
Yeah. So that's a wallop for a 10-year-old. That 20 gauge.
Oh yeah. It's funny because a 20 gauge, you stop and you think, and it doesn't have much kick, but you put that in a single shot youth platform, and those things they'll knock a wall down on the recoil. It's insane.
Oh, absolutely. Especially if you're using buck or a slug.
A slug, yeah. That's what I always had.
That slug.
A slug.
I mean, you put turkey round through anything, and it's got a wallop. I don't think I've ever shot a 20 gauge with a slug in it, or I can't remember if I have or not. Yeah. But I bet that had some serious kick but with that 22 mag. I mean, that didn't kick at all, and it's a pretty accurate shot as well.
I think that is the important thing when you talk about youth hunters, is getting them so that they're not scared of that recoil. Because I can't tell you, as a kid, how many times I would close my eyes before I pulled that trigger, tighten right up, and couldn't hit the broadside of a barn with that thing because I was so concentrated on that recoil. But you take a 22 mag or a 243 or something that has no recoil whatsoever, and it really trains them in good habits.
Yes, yeah. And that right there is key. You want them to have that good shot placement, because everybody unless they haven't shot one yet, everybody remembers their first deer and that excitement, that adrenaline going with it. And I was all over the place. I'm not sure about you, but you're sitting there.
It's a miracle I hit it.
You're trying to hold the rifle, and you're going in circles.
Yeah.
And the last thing you need is something with a high variance of where it's going to hit, trajectory wise. And with the 22 mag, the 243 at that 75 yard mark, 100 yard mark, you're hitting pretty flat.
Yep. I will say that it's the whole caveat to that is it's a good youth gun, but they can't. I would recommend having someone with them with that gun, because if you do miss, you're going to need a follow-up shot, and someone with not a lot of experience, they might not realize that they need that follow-up shot, and you could end up losing a deer or wounding it mortally without realizing it.
Right.
So there's a lot of things with that, being a good youth rifle.
Yes.
Or a good youth caliber.
I've never really gotten into it, but the 6.5 Creedmoor.
Yep.
And I've heard a lot of mixed reviews on that. A lot of mixed reviews.
Yeah.
Most of them hateful, and I don't know why. Because again, I've never really used it. I've stuck to that. Either, like I said, the 22 mag when I started hunting, or when I got back home, I got that 270.
Yep.
Then after that, I've just used the 308. I used the 30-06 for the moose.
Yeah.
And that was awesome. But again, it's in that 30 caliber range. But the 6.5 Creedmoor, and I don't know a whole lot about it because I've never really had the interest in it. But do you know anything on it?
So as far as distance shooting, yeah, I mean, you're looking. It's very, very, very comparable to 270. Straight flat shooting. There are benefits to it. The big thing that I see we live in Maine. Where are you going to use that? You
Right.
know, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And the other thing is, it is one of those rounds that cycles in and cycles out. You know, you have your tried and true, your 30-30, 30-06, 308, your 45-70. They'll always be around. Everyone has one of these calibers, or a rifle in one of these calibers. Everyone that hunts.
Right.
A 6.5, in my mind, is a fad round.
Yep. I could see that.
Yeah, it'll come in. People will be, but just like it was. You know, the hype is, oh, this is a new round, yay. And then as demand drops, production will drop as well, and you're going to end up with a round that you have a hard time finding. It'll be like trying to find 410 back, you know, in COVID days, or it'll be like, it's like trying to find 16 gauge right now.
Yeah, it's impossible, at least around here.
Yeah, and not that 16 gauge is one of those fads, but it's a niche.
Yes, it's very, like, yes,
Yep,
I agree.
yep.
Yep. One of my friends, he came from Montana, and when he got out here, like, what he had for his hunting rifles were 45-70 and the 300 Blackout.
Yep.
And, you know, he was starting to try and get back into hunting, and he goes, I haven't found a spot that is worth shooting these yet. He goes, there's no real distance. And, you know, from what he was explaining out in Montana, like, that's the average gun that you needed, because the distances that you're shooting, you know, there's a big calling for elk out there, so obviously they had that type of distance to shoot at such a larger animal, so they needed that higher caliber, longer shooting type of rifle. But like I was saying, when he came up here, that was his biggest struggle, is, you know, if he saw something that was close enough with those higher caliber, he said, it's gonna be hamburger. It's gonna be missed behind this, you know, thing that I'm shooting at 50 yards with such a high round.
No, the 300 Blackout, isn't that in the 30 caliber?
I am not 100% certain on that, to be honest with you. I think it is.
I think that falls under one of those rounds that, me personally, I would not be opposed to that, except for the fad nature of it.
Right.
You know, I'd like to see it around for a lot longer before I bought into something like that.
Yep. Another decent one that I've actually seen around, which isn't necessarily in the 30 caliber range, and I actually just picked that up last year, and it was more geared towards the moose. Was the 44 mag.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because I picked that up where it was the semi-automatic. It did have that little higher caliber.
Yep.
So it's got that stopping power. But the person I bought it off, he has done very well deer hunting with it.
Yep.
And again, you know, it's that shorter range. It does have that that higher caliber, but also it has that higher grain to it.
Right, yeah. And I think that gun, or that rifle that you're talking about, the Deerfield, if I remember right, is what it's called.
Yes. Yep.
That one is a deer gun. The whole concept for it was shoot through the brush, get your buck.
Right. And that is a massive thing around here, shooting through the brush.
Yeah.
And that's where I kind of have a shortcoming with the 270s and the 308, is those are very, like, they're a very precise round. So
yeah.
Every time you have the potential of shooting through that brush, it's not really the best. And again, that's where I went with the 308 when I was really looking at it, gearing myself towards it, is it was kind of a combination. I can do deer and moose with it.
Yep.
Whereas the moose, you have the longer range typically, but you need that stopping power. And the deer, you have that shorter range, but it's not too overpowered.
Right.
So that 44 mag that's got that girthy, I'm not going to get stopped by these little twigs and whatnot. It's going to blister right through those and still hit right on target.
Yep.
So
But even with last year, I got that deer with the 30-30, 180 range, just because I don't like to break what I use. But my first round hit a little alder about as big around as my thumb, and it deflected quite a bit. It sent it off behind where I was aiming, probably about a foot. Ended up being, kind of gut shot, but not really. We don't want to say gut shot, but kinda.
Yep. No, you didn't gut shot that. I mean, when we were gutting it was completely intact.
No,
It just wasn't where you wanted the shot to be.
The primary shot. I needed a follow-up shot.
Yeah.
I do have to say that it would have died, but I would have been waiting a long time, so it needed the follow-up shot.
Right. But again, in the case of if you had we'll say a 22 mag in that situation, would it have done the trick? Would you have gotten it and stopped it where you did?
Given the situation, I think a 22 mag probably would have completely deflected or disintegrated on that little branch. You know what I mean? And I wouldn't have even had a chance to. Well, no, I would have had a chance to get a follow-up, but taking a running shot with a 22 mag that's a little more precise.
Right.
A little more precision's required for that than the 30-30.
Which, again, after using all these different rounds, it's really, it's definitely good to have the experience of going through with all of these and seeing which ones I like, which ones I have the capability of, or capability with, I should say, to actually do a successful shot. Make sure that the animal is ethically taken, ethically harvested, and that's typically why I stick with the 30 grains. The 30 caliber range is I know I am comfortable shooting that. I know I'm going to make an ethical kill. I know the capabilities of it, and I just think it's an overall good round. I've harvested the most animals in that round, and that's why I stick with it. It's tried and true for me.
Right, and I think that there is a lot to be said about what you are comfortable with, and it's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy. I'm comfortable with 30-30, right? So I do best with 30-30 because I have the confidence to make the shot, and I'm going to be using it the most. So like we'll say 270. I've never harvested an animal with a 270 just because I've never harvested an animal with a 270.
Right.
I've never done it, never had a desire to do it. I don't even own a 270. So that cuts into it quite a bit. But if I decided early on in my hunting career that a bolt action 270 was what I loved, then that's what I would have the most practice with. That's what I would have taken the most game with, and that is what I would swear by.
Right. And before I knew what I didn't, or before I knew what I knew now, I thought the 270 was the cat's pajamas for me. Because that's what we grew up hearing was like the best quality hunting rifle and all that. So that's what I got when I got back home was the 270, and I said, this is the business right here.
Yeah.
And I got a few animals, some that I shouldn't have with it, and some that I did, and the driving force for me to actually not have the 270 anymore was actually the malfunctioning with it. That my specific 270 was every time I pulled the bolt out, it would come out.
Yep.
Or pulled the bolt back, it would come out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, boop, gone. So right. I turned that that 5-round magazine into a single shot.
Right, and that kind of defeats the purpose. I guess it doesn't. I mean, you could say, okay, this is a single shot,
right,
and just live with it like that. But why?
Right. Oh, exactly. Especially when sometimes you can't just get away with one single shot.
Right. No.
But yeah, so anyway, overall, that's my opinion on hunting calibers. Is I'm definitely strong into the 30s, and I think that it's an excellent hunting round, and that I've gotten the most ethical harvest with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about your thoughts?
Something in the 30 caliber is
Yeah.
what I would always go with, especially with all the things we've outlined. You know, you have your thick brush, you have the stopping power, you have varying ranges depending on what you use. I always stick with the 30-30 just because of where I hunt. I have, taken deer with the 30-06, and that's just fine. I just feel like it is overkill for the style hunting that I do.
Right.
And what about platforms? As far as, you get a lot of people talking about bolt action, the accuracy of bolt action versus lever action, versus semi-automatic or even pump.
I think getting into that is a whole different ball game, and I think honestly it all depends on your preference, and it doesn't necessarily matter what platform you have. And this is my opinion, as long as you can shoot it accurately, and if something does happen, you can fix whatever happens right off, so that you can get that shot off and ethically harvest that animal.
Right.
And some people were raised on pump rifles. So, we were raised in kind of like a combination, because the 22s were semi-automatic,
Yep.
the 270s were bolt, the 30-30s they were lever action. So I have all of them,
Yep.
and it all depends on the situation that I'm hunting in to what I bring, and
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with all of them, which helps out a lot.
Yep.
So
Yeah, there's a lot to be said for that, because the first rifle that I actually hunted with was a lever action 30-30, and that is by far my favorite. By far.
it's just a good overall gun.
Yeah.
Like it is a good gun.
You live in Maine, you gotta
Yeah.
have the lever action 30-30.
Yeah, it's like drinking Moxie and wearing a flannel.
Right.
Like you have to at some point.
You gotta do it.
Right.
Yeah. You're not actually from Maine until you have a 3.36 in your arsenal.
But all right. Well, anyway, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. Hopefully, we learned something out of this. I know it was good to sit down and really talk about the calibers, and it re-emphasized some good positives for what I think are my choices.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's different for everybody. Again, there are guys out there that 45-70 is their deer round.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't want that tree to stop me from getting a deer.
Right.
The splinters will take it out if the round doesn't make it through.
Oh yeah.
But there's a trade-off. How much meat are you looking to harvest from your harvest? Right. And the argument there is, well, if I just wound it, I'm going to lose all of it. Right.
And that can be a valid argument, very much. And what's saying, like the story you said while we were talking about this, you had to do a follow-up shot.
Right. 45-70, I wouldn't have had to do a follow-up shot.
Right. So you would have lost the same amount of meat.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And again, it really all falls back onto your preference and what you feel is the most effective one for you to use.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Being comfortable with it makes it the best round.
Yes, absolutely. And I agree with that. As long as you're comfortable and you can shoot it, that's what makes it a good quality round.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you for listening, and good luck out there.